way of supplementary appropriation, because I think you're just playing with numbers. Does any other member wish to speak? In accordance with Rule 17.3, I call for quorum.
有冇其他委員要發言？
Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Albert Chan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just now, I commented on Annex B. I say that a lot of the information is not clear or even misleading. I would just like to quote a few more examples, and then I will complete my comment on Annex B. Annex B had 49, Food and Environmental Hygiene Department. The supplementary appropriation is $128 million. The major reasons for the supplementary appropriation are for meeting the cash flow requirement of a commitment item assistance scheme for hawkers in fixed-pitch hawker areas. Here, that begs a question, because after I've read this, I checked some past documents. Now, if my information is correct, in 2013, on the 15th of March, so it's in the financial year 2012 to 13, this item was endorsed by the Finance Committee. $230 million were approved for the assistance scheme for hawkers in fixed-pitch hawker areas. The FC paper explained that it's on an accountable basis, that a maximum of $40,000 or $47,000 or $54,000 to a fixed-pitch hawker is for funding the reconstruction of the pitch. So at that time, $230 million were approved by the Finance Committee in 2013. And then this year, this is a supplementary appropriation for the year 2013 to 14. Now, you approved, the sum was approved in 2013, so the money should have been spent in 2012 to 13. But then this year, you are seeking a supplementary appropriation in 2013 to 14 for more than $100 million. That's baffling. It also includes civil service pay adjustment. Well, yes, exactly. One of my comments. I don't know how much is for civil service pay adjustment out of the $100-odd million. Now, for injection of funds, there's no mention of civil service pay adjustment. For head 49, it says here the major reasons for the supplementary appropriation are additional expenses arising from the 2013 civil service pay adjustment end. So there are two reasons. But then out of that $128 million, how much is for this commitment item? And I already asked the question. Now, the funding was approved in 2012 to 13. How come in 2014 we have to seek supplementary appropriation for the year 2013 to 2014? Now, for 2014, we should be seeking a supplementary appropriation for 2013 to 14, not for 2012 to 2013. But maybe my understanding is wrong, but the Secretary can enlighten me later on. But anyway, we have tried to research into information. So our logical deduction is given just now, and that's led me to these questions. I wouldn't dare call them criticisms. I'll just say that it's led to these questions. So is this supplementary appropriation lawful and reasonable? Because we don't have the figures, so there's no way we can comment whether it's reasonable or not. For for Head 49, Supplementary Appropriation, we can see that in the whole mechanism, there's no account for the budget issues, and it is a serious issue. Here we're talking about public expenditure. The Audit Commission should really look at it. But of course, after many years, the Commission could still get to the bottom of the matter. But I should say the Audit Commission should follow up on this issue. Another case, Head 190, University Grants Committee, Supplementary Appropriation $641 million. Here is stated clearly that the supplementary appropriations for meeting the cash flow requirements of a commitment item 6 matching grant scheme for the post-secondary education sector. Well, I know there have been a lot of debates and arguments over the policy. The People Power has criticized on many occasions the unfairness and unreasonable aspects of the matching grant scheme. This time round, we're talking about an amount of $641 million. Again, it's the same question. How much is for civil service pay adjustment and how much is for the 6 matching grant scheme? Again, there's no information here. And I must point out that there have been many comments that this scheme makes rich universities richer and poor universities poorer. For example, Lingnan College only received $180 million, but the Chinese university received $2.7 billion of the matching grant. So you see, therefore, different universities stand to benefit from the scheme in wildly varying ways.
Another point is about Head 100, the Marine Department. The additional money sources for civil service pay adjustment. Just like to put on record, we still remember the Lam Sea tragedy. And the money here would include a payment or a salary for the director who has now retired. Members may recall our criticism for the director, for the ex-director who did not attend our hearings to give us an account of matter, and we found it regrettable. Now, if by approving the civil service pay adjustment here, the ex-director would also be included, and there is no mechanism for us to exclude him. This is very regrettable, and we are angry. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Leung Kwok Hong? Mr. Chairman, please allow me to beg you to invoke 17.3 and 17.2 to call for a quorum.
Mr. Lam Kwok Hong. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And now, turn to number 184, transfer to funds. Let's not talk about whether the funds are meaningful or the motives behind them, because they are beyond our reach. But then once a fund has been set up, we have to keep injecting funds into them. Now, $10 billion are being asked for. What happens is that for the year 2013-14, the original estimate was $743 million. Now, the supplementary appropriation is $10.15 billion. We have to take the matter seriously, because when the matter goes to the funds, it is beyond our reach. Now, we have to confirm whether the funds are operating smoothly and properly. This is the political meaning of our action here. Now, on the face of it, $10.1 billion is a huge sum. But then $10 billion will go to the, or have gone to the lotteries fund. As everybody knows, a lot of money comes from the lotteries fund. It is like the poor box. And in fact, Mr. Zhang Dak-sing, Secretary for Home Affairs, will get money from the lotteries fund to pay out for the welfare items, or they provide for disaster relief, things like that. I think it is right to do so. But then the problem is, for the $10 billion involved this time, I think there is one difference here. We have a special item this year. There is private land for welfare purposes. I support the move. It should be encouraged. This is because in order to revitalize certain private sites for welfare purposes, I think the government is right to make sure that this can be facilitated. There is money can be given to the landowners to revitalize the site. Now, you may want to know why I want to raise this point. The question is, I don't think they should come to this fund to get the money. I think the money should have been obtained from another pocket or from another head, and it is again beyond our reach. This is because the exchange fund has been involved. But on this occasion, how come that the money doesn't come from the exchange fund? Rather, it comes from the public revenue. What I want to drive at is that it is better to go to the exchange fund directly instead of going through us and thus requiring our approval. For the first quarter this year, the exchange fund has seen its profits dropping by 60%. It is still $11 billion. In other words, there is still $1 billion left with the exchange fund. So I want to know why they would rather come to the LegCo than go directly to the exchange fund. Now, for the balance of the lotteries fund, again, it is being managed by the exchange fund. In other words, the performance of the exchange fund will have bearing on the lotteries fund. Therefore, I think in the future, at least for me, for anything managed by the exchange fund, I think it's better for us to open an account with the exchange fund so that the surplus of the exchange fund can go into such an account. But of course, I'm not sure about the view of the administration. Assuming that, say, for example, we'd like to get $5 billion from the government, but we could have got the same amount from the exchange fund. The effect is the same. There won't be any risk of getting too much from us, and thus the amount has to be clawed back. I hope Professor Chen can explain this matter. I'm not against the $10 billion involved. I think it is a matter of trying to get the money from the wrong account. And then, setting that aside, I want to go to number 44, and that's the Environmental Protection Department. Again, it is something very sensitive when it comes to the disputes concerning the 3 landfills and the incinerator or the integrated waste management facility. Now, $4.8 billion more is needed because the government would like to inject money into the Environment and Conservation Fund. It was approved on the 15th of June 2013. And I think it is said that the investment return of the fund will be used to subsidize the various activities. The fund was first set up in 1994. Only $1.9 billion has been spent. In other words, $1.9 billion over 20 years. How come that all out of a sudden they would like to get $4.8 billion more? I think this is because the government has changed the source of the fund. The government would like to inject more money into the fund, and only the investment return will be spent on subsidizing the environmental protection efforts. I don't know what others think, but I think this is a major policy change. If we give our agreement to this, it means that the government is now changing the policy with the injection of the funds. It is said that the panel has already given approval, or the FC has given approval. I just don't know whether it is necessary to inject $4.8 billion into the fund in order to get a return, to get a dividend. Now, for 20 years, they've only been spending $1.9 billion. I think it's better to do it on a reimbursable basis. That's much better than tying our hands and feet. In my humble opinion, I think it is like depositing the money with the financial services institutions, and then we get a return, we get a dividend. So we just allow them to invest the money for us. We may not be talking about a fixed rate for our rate of return, since we follow the interest rate movements of the US. So we may not have any assurance. Therefore, financially speaking, it is not desirable. Administratively, again, it is not desirable. Now, they're very ambitious, they're very aggressive, they are getting $4.8 billion. Why is it that we've invented the idea of the mandatory provident fund? This is because we allow the investors to do the investment for us. Now, on this occasion, I want to point out that for the figure of $4.8 billion, had it been spent on another account, it would have a greater degree of flexibility, or there can be timely responses so that policy adjustments can be carried out more flexibly. For organizations given subsidies from this fund, What are they? Who are they? In fact, they are the owners' corporations. It begs the question as to whether an owner's corporation is a good recipient to get the money so as to engage in recovery of waste. Just take a look around. We're still talking about the 3-colored recycling bins in the buildings. Now, you put $4.8 billion into the fund, and then you get the return from the investment, and then you use the money to subsidize the recycling bins. I don't think it is a wise move. This is because for such funds, they are beyond our reach. The fund will operate on its own. So $4.8 billion will be set aside, and we can't monitor how it operates. But we are supposed to be the gatekeeper. So would you want to give your support, your agreement lightly? Now, if it is said that through the fund we can provide subsidies to encourage the OCs to carry out the recycling efforts, I think we need to have a debate as to which approach is better. Now, we have to find out how the leverage is being implemented when it comes to the spending of government money. Now, $4.8 billion. We don't get much out of it. If we're talking about a new scheme next year, then we may spend another $4.8 billion again. So it is an ever-growing fund. In other words, the cash that we have will be channeled into a financial institution, and then we're supposed to get a dividend or a return from it. I would like to pause here. Another member will speak on another topic. Does another member wish to speak? Mr. Gary Fan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the Supplementary Appropriation 2013-2014 bill, I would like to talk about number 122, Hong Kong Police Force. And that's about additional expenses arising from the 2013 Civil Service Pay Adjustment. Mr. Chairman, you have said that for additional expenses arising from the 2013 Civil Service Pay Adjustment, the expenses have already been incurred. There's no way that we can take it away. But if we think it is unjustified, I would like to invoke 17.3 to have a quorum call.
Mr. Gary Fan, thank you. Mr. Chairman. Well, you said just now for civil service pay adjustment, the money has been spent. There's no way we could go back on that. But still, I would like to take this opportunity to say, if the civil service pay increase is not worth it, that people don't deserve it, or if civil servants perform poorly, even with the pay increase, then we have the duty to reflect that, and we have to remind the departments whether they should give pay increase this way, or maybe they should deny certain individuals pay increase. And then we have to see whether the pay increase is reasonable, whether it's been exaggerated, whether there's any corruption involved, whether money is spent on buying fish balls like what Timothy Tong did. That's why I've asked for more detailed scrutiny of this. Now, for the police force, from 1950s to 1970s, there was rife corruption in the police force, and the police force sheltered illegal gambling and vice activities. But then in 1974, the ICAC was set up, and then there was a drive to stamp up corruption. So corruption in the police force dwindled, and then over the next few decades, the police managed to establish a good image. If the police force could maintain such integrity, it's efficient and it performs well, then of course they deserve a pay increase, even if it's some $360 million. There's no problem. But what is a problem here is that since 1997, the government is moving towards totalitarianism, and the police force has indirectly become the tool for the SAR government to suppress its people. It's become a tool to maintain stability. Since Andy Zhang became the commissioner in 2011, his hawkish style is becoming increasingly evident. And there is indeed political manipulation of the Hong Kong police force, where the force is supposed to be impartial and unbiased. But then there are attempts to abuse to power for people taking part in peaceful demonstration. They are subjected to unreasonable behavior, both physically and mentally. This is a way to try to get them. Andy Zhang's been performing poorly. If he gets a pay rise every year, now last year, the administration already increased the pay for this person who is the public enemy of the people. So that's ridiculous, and we should condemn such pay increase for him. Now, for Andy Zhang, what has he done in the past year? There was some trainee solicitor, Melody Chen. Now, she was sentenced to. She was sentenced 2 years ago, and but she was only prosecuted 2 years after the alleged crime.
Mr. Fan, I think you've digressed too far. What has case and pass got to do with the supplementary appropriation here? All right, I beg your pardon, Chairman. I was trying to use Melody Chen's case to illustrate. Now, let's set aside whether the prosecution was reasonable or not, but the police was very inefficient. It took 2 years, took them 2 years to arrest Melody Chen, saying that she was wanted in a low-profile manner. Now, refer to another case. In March this year, Andy Lau, when he met the press on the attack of journalist, Mr. Lau, he did not talk about whether there was any linchpin behind the attack. However, at that press briefing, he said for 5 times that there was no direct evidence to show that the attack of Mr. Lau had anything to do with press freedom in Hong Kong. However, the culprit who was arrested in Dongguan had yet to arrive in Hong Kong. The police had yet to interrogate him. So do you think there is any problem with this attitude? So even before evidence gathering has stopped? Well, Mr. Fan, this case has been referred to a number of times, and detailed comments and elaboration of the case has nothing to do with the appropriation bill. Chairman, I must say that the two are related. The case illustrates clearly that it is unwise and unworthy to give Andy Zhang a pay rise, because under his leadership, the force had very bad records in past few years, and the rehearsal occupied central movement on the 2nd of July, where 551 protesters were arrested, a record high since another incident. The demonstrators anticipated that they would be arrested. The problem is, after arrest, the police did not give them food in a timely manner. For 1 or 2 hours, they were not allowed to use the washroom. Can anyone stand it? Can anyone here stand that? For a couple of hours, they were not allowed to call family, not allowed to contact their lawyer. They were detained for a long time without giving statements. So this is like administrative detention on the mainland, and they were subject to intense heat and sunlight in coaches. Andy Zhang has caused our police force to regress to many decades ago. The dark age has fallen onto the police force again. So, Mr. Chairman, so for Head 122, Hong Kong Police Force, additional expenses rising from the 2013 civil service pay adjustment in the supplementary appropriation. I strongly condemn the CP Andy Zhang for any upward pay adjustment. He has damaged the image of the police force, which took many years to establish, so he is not qualified to receive a pay rise. Thank you. Mr. Ray Chen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the last round, I spoke on Head 53, Government Secretariat, Home Affairs Bureau, a supplementary appropriation of $14.9 billion for injection of funds into the key CCF. CCF is supposed to fill the welfare gap for many disadvantaged groups in the community. However, the Ka-keung Community Fund here is just to balance the government's wrong calculation or wrong estimates. I'd like to submit evidence to substantiate my claim. Since its establishment to May 2014, the Community Care Fund has only spent $3.5 billion. Actually, so $14.9 billion would be injected into the Community Care Fund as the capital. However, since its establishment to date, only $3.5 billion have been spent, and it has now a balance of $20.8 billion. $4.9 billion is cash, and $15.9 billion deposited with Hong Kong MA, or rather the exchange fund. Now, in this $4.9 billion of cash balance, well, we're going to add $14.9 billion. In fact, even if only the interest is spent, we can help the grassroots. In June 2013, the funding paper to inject $14.9 billion into the fund. Let me quote a few examples to benefit groups of people that cannot benefit from the budget. Those who have no property, not in subsidized public housing, not on CSSL, and to strengthen the fund's role to help these groups of people to carry out trial or pilot schemes to help those who are in financial difficulties. And Mr. Matthew Zhang, the Secretary, like to say that before a new item is created, there must be a series of study, and the money may come too late, and people cannot afford to wait until there is recurrent funding for such schemes, and therefore the CCF is meant to help people in this situation. The majority of the community care fund is being managed by the Hong Kong MA. So why don't we just inject some of our exchange fund into the CCF just to replenish the fund? This is more realistic. We can then cut down the government's expenses, and this is also proper use of over $1,000 billion of reserves held by the Hong Kong SAR. Mr. Albert Chen once proposed a fund to improve the livelihood of the grassroots. Now, if the money should come from the exchange fund instead of the government's public coffers, that means that we will have $14.9 billion in extra, and that means $2,000 per capita in Hong Kong. Of course, the government would not accept my proposal because, as I said right at the beginning, one of the purposes of the CCF is to serve as a buffer when deficit was budgeted, and when it turned out to be a surplus, then the extra money can go to the CCF. Of course, the government is very miserly. It will not allow you to spend all its money. So in this way, this can help the government to balance the book and turn the deficit to a surplus. So the money is spent on record, but not really dispersed. So there is double benefits for the government. And we believe that the best way is to ask the Labour and Welfare Bureau to manage the CCF instead of the HA Bureau. Since we do not agree to the mode of funding, and we do not agree that HAB should manage the fund, and therefore we oppose this supplementary appropriation item. Now, the government likes to create fake expenses, and that example is head 148, transfer of funds, 184. Transfer of funds. The government is seeking a supplementary appropriation of $10.15 billion. So the supplementary appropriation is inflated from $740 million to $10.8 billion. So you see how amazing this head can be. A surplus of $10.8 billion is now an expenditure item. The funds are for injection into the lotteries fund and disaster relief fund. Among this $10.1 billion, $10 billion should be put into the lotteries fund for that special scheme for use of private land for welfare purposes. While I'm not going to discuss the program in detail, I am of the view that the program is worthy of our support, because it will allow more resources for private organizations to use land and resources to provide welfare facilities, and can also shorten the waiting time for our CHEs. 40 organizations have submitted proposals to the scheme involving 10,000 odd RCHE places. Now, our proposal is according to our information, this $10 billion, just like the CCF, need not be taken from the government's revenue. It need not be a supplementary appropriation item. We can directly via money from our exchange fund, and there will be $10 billion to carry out the program. As Mr. Lang Kwok-hong said, there is still balance in the exchange fund even if we put some of the money into this head. In fact, the balance of the lotteries fund is being managed by the exchange fund anyway. So why don't we directly inject money from the exchange fund into the lotteries fund on an fully accountable basis? I think the government is just putting money from this pocket to another. I think after my illustration with these heads, I think you understand the operation of the system now. Now I'd like to turn to head 156, Education Bureau. Mr. Griffin, who was the first to speak, commented that the supplementary appropriation is for additional expenses arising from the 2030 civil service pay adjustment, an injection of funds into the language fund. And the money sought is $5.25 billion. I think it's among the top 5 when it comes to the amount of supplementary appropriation. Injection of funds into the language fund, I don't have a breakdown. That is, I don't know how much is for pay adjustment, how much for injection of funds into the language fund. Still, that is not the main point. I think it is a waste of money to inject money into the language fund. Mr. Griffin spent a lot of time talk about strengthening our education of Putonghua. I think at this point, if we ask that Chinese language as a subject be taught in Putonghua, will create further conflicts between our local culture and the mainland culture. In 2014, on the 10th of January, the injection of funds into the language fund was approved by the FS. It was a controversial subject because only the investment return of the funds would be spent on improving language education. According to the administration, should the return be 5%, $250 million can be spent for language education. And the capital will be capped by the Hong Kong MA for investment. As a result, we can't have the capital for benefiting the public. If the $5 billion is shared among everyone in Hong Kong, then each will get $700, and we can then have 20 odd meals with it.
Well, on 6 occasions, injection of funds have been approved for the language fund. Now, on this occasion, in one go, $5 billion have been injected into the language fund. So it is a matter of channeling the surplus. The government would rather do that than giving the money to the people. Now, for the rate of return, even though we are not able to cover all the expenditure items of the language fund, I think the deficit would only be $100 million each year. In other words, the language fund can be used to meet the expenditure for 50 years. Now, a lot of the money goes to the learning of Putonghua, and it is said that this may erode our local cultural characteristics. We have schemes to promote Putonghua. The scholar has got 3 projects for this purpose, and there are also roving concerts catering for the attendance of 16,000 students. I don't want to go into the details, but I just want to say that by injecting funds into the language fund, and I think the Education Bureau and the administration have actually overlooked our Cantonese. We always say that we need to improve the proficiency of Putonghua of our population. Well, I don't mean to offend our legislators. Some of us don't speak Cantonese proficiently. Even some of our colleagues can't even enunciate their names in Cantonese properly. I think you're digressing. I think perhaps we should get some money from the language fund to improve our Cantonese. I agree that our younger generation cannot speak proficient Cantonese. This is because those born in the 80s or post-80s, they don't have any opportunity to improve their Cantonese proficiency. At university, I do have such a class. They can't tell the difference between walk and gog and also other differences. Maybe you can't tell how the 2 sounds differ. I don't want to argue from the perspective of whether we are mainlandizing Hong Kong if we promote Putonghua, but I just want to look at it from the other end. That is, if we have the money, I think we should enhance the proficiency of Cantonese first. Don't assume that we are born with the proficiency of Cantonese. In fact, if your mother can't speak Cantonese properly, then you may learn it in the wrong way. So I think we need to set our priorities right. English is important. Putonghua isn't not important, isn't unimportant, but and we have also got a subject for Putonghua in secondary and primary schools. But then we've overlooked the need to enhance our Cantonese. It is only when I attended my university education that we were given specific lessons to improve our Cantonese. I don't want to go into the details, so I hope the money under the language fund can be spent on promoting Cantonese. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Gary Fan. Mr. Chairman, for the appropriation, Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2013-2014 Bill, I would like to focus on number 184, transfers to funds, and that's about injection of funds into the Lotteries Fund and the Disaster Relief Fund. I would like to focus on subhead 990, which is the Disaster Relief Fund. The purpose of setting up that fund is to provide for a standing mechanism so that when there is a need for international humanitarian aid, we have the money to go for the purpose. On the 15th of November 2013, we were asked to approve an item, and then we were told about the money spent from that fund. Altogether, 17 items were within the 6-month period from 1st of April to 1st of November 2013. 16 out of 17 went to relieve the disasters in mainland, just 1 for India. $149 million are involved, and then 99% of the money went to the mainland. So unless we have a very narrow outlook when it comes to international disaster relief, I would say that the spending of the fund departs from the original purpose of this international humanitarian aid. I think it is too lopsided. When the FC discussed the estimates, was this raised? No, I did not. You should have reserved. You should have raised this point on that day. I did talk about the individual topics, but I didn't take an overall view. I think what you are saying should have been raised at the time when we have the special FC meetings. I take your point. I will be precise. I have in fact taken your advice. I just want to say that for the report 2012 to 2013, as of the 31st of March 2013, 80% of the relief went to the mainland, measuring $1.2 billion. I think it is a sum that would warrant our concern. By comparison, only 3% of the money went to Africa. For the $1.2 billion for the mainland, I think $700 million went directly to the mainland local governments organizations. And then the provincial or local governments on the mainland accounted for 50% of the recipients. In fact, 17% went to World Vision, and then other sums went to the Red Cross, etc. Of course, we don't want to see natural disasters happening. I'm not trying to say that a particular country or other countries have more disasters, but I just want to say that the fund was set up for the purpose of relieving for providing humanitarian aid. But I'm afraid that the spending pattern is too lopsided, and I hope that the government will bear this point in mind. The Wenchuan earthquake in the year 2008 has given us a painful experience. Money was donated, but there's no way that we can monitor how the money was spent. On the contrary, it was abused by the corrupt officials. In 2013, in the month of May, the government was headstrong, and $100 million was donated to Sichuan to relieve the disaster in Ya'an. It was controversial, and we need to be careful about this. And then I would like to refer to something more recent, and this is because Liu Manjia was arrested for corruption, bribery, and he was relieved of all his official duties. And in fact, he's the former party secretary, and then he was arrested for abusing the $100 million donated by the Hong Kong government to Sichuan. And in fact, they did not adhere to the earthquake standards of the national government, and as a result, in the city of Ya'an, the buildings could not withstand the earthquake despite the national standards. And I think it is difficult for us to have trust in the local governments. That is, the relief fund that we provide to the mainland governments, mainland local governments will be properly spent on disaster relief. Well, we have the Disaster Relief Fund Committee. I'm afraid monitoring is inadequate, and then the vetting is also lacking. Is also lacking in transparency. And in May 2013, it was exposed that two groups with a very strong mainland background were able to get $40 million. There's this Chinese Gospel organization and another organization which have been named. They've been exposed by the media with very confusing accounts, and it was found that they might have abused the donations to meet their own expenditure, and then the directors were suspected to have received a remuneration. Mr. President, since the incident of many mainlanders were concerned about the possible abuse and corruption of the charitable organizations on the mainland. They also suspected that the charitable organizations might be closely related to the corrupt officials. So we have to watch out for little-known charitable organizations and whether the donations they receive from us will really be channeled to the victims. So for the injection of funds into the disaster relief fund, I would say that in the future for the DRFC, I think in the future the committee should listen to the views of the people of Hong Kong, and we should also change the vetting procedures. There should be more objective criteria for the use of the fund so that the public can more easily monitor the operation of the fund, so that the fund can be spent in such a way that it meets the mission. And we should not be channeling the money to the mainland so that it becomes the automatic teller machine of some corrupt and rich people. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to talk about number 53, the Home Affairs Bureau. Well, again, this is related to the injection of funds. Within the Home Affairs Bureau, the Community Care Fund comes under the HAB. The administration hopes that there may be people who are not assisted by the safety network of the CSSA, and also there are people who don't get any assistance from other channels, and so the CCF is supposed to fill the gaps. I think the original mission is good. Now, $14.9 billion is the sum of the supplementary appropriation. The same period last year, we asked for the universal retirement protection, and we failed, and then the administration came to get $14.9 billion for the purpose of the CCF. I objected to that last year, and I would oppose it again this year. Now, when was the CCF set up? In the month of May 2014. Now, $3.157 billion was given, and then the balance was $20.8 billion. We have cash in the amount of $4.9 billion. Again, $15.9 billion went to the Hong Kong MA to manage the money for us. So we used $15.9 billion to get a return of $900 million.
And the CCF is supposed to be for the end withouts. So there will be relief measures for them. What's the purpose of the relief measures? A large sum of money is spent on targeted assistance programs. Well, I support that. That is, you take a targeted approach, you cure illnesses immediately. So it's a targeted approach, is right. It helps to relieve people. But then there are these so-called pilot schemes. Well, we know what pilot schemes are. It means that you put aside a sum of money and do the scheme for 3 years and see how it works. But I'm against using the money for these pilot schemes. So what are we piloting? Because it's a matter of policy. So the government has some policy, and through the Home Affairs Bureau, money is paid out. It's not in line with the usual practice. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, I should remind you that when you debated the appropriation bill, you should have given these views. I said so. Well, if you said so already, you don't have to say it again now. You shouldn't be going into details about whether the funds should be approved then. Well, Mr. Chairman, I find that I'm really right now. A year ago when I said so, I wasn't sure I was right, but now after a year I can see they are not spending the money. They put a lot of money in the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. Well, Mr. Chairman, if I said so then, you would have said, well, you wouldn't know how they would use the money. But now they've been given the money and that's what they're doing. So that's just to prove my point. Because then I only said there's a chance that they might become ill, they might die, but now they are about to die. So shouldn't I talk about it? Anyway, you say I shouldn't go into details, fine. But there's a problem with the Home Affairs Bureau managing this sum of money. The Home Affairs Bureau is not like the Labor and Welfare Bureau. Now, so there's a gap in the net of the Labor and Welfare Bureau. Of course, it should be for the Labor and Welfare Bureau to fill the gap. You asked Zhang Tak-sing to do it. He's got his hands full with the Mega Events Fund, with the Lions Dance, and so on. You know, the department, the bureau is criticized so much by the Public Accounts Committee. Now, I was in jail. After I came out of jail, I saw so much has happened. So, the fund is set up not to do something like that. And then they asked the wrong bureau to control the funds. I don't know if you follow what I'm saying. Maybe I'm tired. Anyway. When that's excessive spending, or if the fund doesn't work so well, it's a structural issue because it's being led by laymen. I can give you an example. The Community Care Fund supports many assistance schemes. I just give you one example. Caring for the elderly. You can give them money to care for the elderly, but for a person with disability, the carer doesn't get any money. Honestly, just because I care for different types of person, but actually I'm making the same effort, but then there's this discrepancy in the policy. So if you ask Zhang Tak-sing, he would know nothing. Only Matthew Cheung would know what it's about. That's why it was a rushed decision then. Now, okay, the government says it knows about the end results, it's established this fund, and so we just give them the money. But what happens is, after we've given them money, they ask for supplementary appropriation. And then, I'm just trying to point out, but you said I already spoke then. But why I'm speaking again now is because they have made no improvement. If we've given them the money, they should have put right the wrong, and they should hand over the responsibility to the Labor and Welfare Bureau, and then I might allow them more. And that's another problem. That is, again, they asked the Hong Kong Monetary Authority to invest the money. The Hong Kong MA was not established for such tasks. No wonder C.Y. Leung proposed a new council, the Financial Development Council. But the Hong Kong Monetary Authority is supposed to, the central bank is supposed to watch the exchange, to watch the Hong Kong dollar. But you ask them to do something totally irrelevant. Now, you say you want them to make money for you, so they have such a heavy workload, and then they become perfunctory in performing their tasks. How can our governance be like this? you know, because this fund's been established, it's become a form of reward. Now, reward may not necessarily be a bad thing. Am I saying it's a collusion between the government and the business? No. But rather, they will just give money out recklessly. Just they tell you to shut up. I'll just give you some money and you can spend it. That cannot be the wisdom of someone who rules. If you give the money to an outsider to manage it, or if you ask the Hong Kong Monetary Authority to achieve annualized return, then it means you are farming out your responsibility. So the government would wash its hands off it and nobody cares. I know you are getting impatient. Mr. Lang Kwok-hung, you're speaking for the third time, so please don't dwell on details. Please be concise. Well, okay, I'll be concise. It's easy to be concise. 3 words. Rule 17.3. Mr. Chairman, allow me to allow you to invoke Rule 17.3 to call for quorum.
有冇委員要發言？
Does any member wish to speak? Secretary, do you intend to speak? Chairman, I pressed the button and I also put up my hand. Mr. Gray Fan speaking for the 4th time. I know. However, every time I speak, I'm on different subjects. And I have my different concerns, and please allow to complete my speeches. Now, I'd like to comment on Head 44 of the Supplementary Appropriation Bill and Environmental Protection Department for injection of funds into the Environment and Conservation Fund. The fund was established in 1994 under Cap 450 Environment and Conservation Fund Ordinance. The administration has injected $173 million into the fund so far, and then on the 14th of June 2013, $5 billion were approved by the FC to use it as seed money, and the investment returns will be used for supporting green projects. In other words, the EC fund is funded by public money. We have very similar funds established recently with the support of public money. So for such a large fund, the funded projects have to be approved by the Council to ensure that the projects are worthwhile and value for money. So the government has to get the endorsement of the Council before injecting funds into the EC fund. But for disbursement to projects under the fund, no Council's approval is needed. That means that has undermined our power to monitor the use of public money. If the projects are not subject to logical scrutiny, then the transparency, the efficiency, and a fair distribution of funds may not be duly protected. Now, under the EC fund, the EC fund will formulate various projects and allow different organizations to apply for funds on a non-profit-making basis. And the fund will consider the service recipients for the projects. If the money is mainly for improving the software and hardware of the organizations concerned, then we won't know because the public cannot be benefited and we won't be informed. Allow me to quote one example. Ma On Shan Community Service Association has applied for money from the fund to carry a project to show respect for the elderly by helping them to save power. They would help elderly persons to change their lights into energy-saving bulbs. Only people living in Ma Shan that are related to the Ma On Shan Community Service Association can benefit. Other elderly singletons are not eligible, and I think this is unfair and is against the principle of fair allocation of funds. And very often, organizations come to apply for money not to benefit the public, but themselves. For instance, the union RCH in Shamoping applied for money to change the air conditioning system. Another organization applied for money to install LED and for replacement of the air conditioning system. Perhaps this organization really wants to help the environment in the projects, but many families in Hong Kong would also like to have funding assistance to help them to save power. But will they be eligible to apply under the fund? Not necessarily so. The purpose of the ECF is to promote environmental protection. However, the money is from our public coffers, so we have to ensure the resources are fairly distributed and allocated. And therefore, when the ECF rolls out more projects, it should consider the coverage of the projects and should take the initiative to invite organizations of different districts to apply for money. Projects such as provision of new electrical appliances. Now, if they are applicable to the whole territory, then the administration should consider making it a policy to serve the whole community. Now, we are concerned about the efficiency of the ECF. In 1994, the fund was established, and it's been 20 years since its establishment. As at the 31st of March 2013, grants totaling $800 million have been approved for recovery of food waste and reduction of waste and carbon auditing and sorting of waste at source, so on and so forth. Looking at the coverage of these programs, well, you may say that they are very comprehensive, but we don't know how effective they are. If we just have to look at the 2013 blueprint for resource recycling, for 10 years, we will know that the waste generation per capita compare with Seoul, Japan, and Taiwan, we're doing worse. Because here we are generating 1.3 kilograms per capita, much higher than the 0.95 in kilogram in Seoul, 0.77 in Taipei, so on and so forth. However, they started later than we did. And they started waste reduction initiatives in 1995. How come they are more successful than we are? They educate the public, and they've also got a series of mandatory public measures. For instance, they have the waste charging scheme and also a sorting of waste initiative. For the ECF, we rely on community organizations to organize a non-voluntary and non-official programs. The crux of the matter is if the administration doesn't use its authority properly to formulate environmental protection policies and measures, then no matter how much money we provide to the ECF, the outcome won't be desirable, and the cost effectiveness is limited. There are so many organizations applying for money from the ECF for energy efficiency projects. Over 1,000 buildings or residential developments are involved, and the money can range from a few $100,000 to millions of dollars. The ECF will only monitor administratively the operation of these projects. Now, if there is no or insufficient monitoring, then we cannot ensure efficiency. Take an energy efficiency program as an example. We want to ensure that owners of residential or commercial or composite buildings to conduct energy efficiency audits of their buildings. How much money is spent properly? How much has been used for regular maintenance and repair of these buildings? The government doesn't know. This goes to show that monitoring isn't sufficient. Lastly, I'd like to say that the request for another $5 billion into the ECF, while the LegCo cannot monitor the use of the money under the fund, and there is unfair allocation of funds, I have reservations. Yes, environmental protection is an important area and something for the government to do. We should urge the EPD to take up the responsibility and formulate comprehensive environmental protection policies with sorting at source. We should not rely on organizations to receive money under the ECF to carry out PR type of projects. So, Mr. Chairman, I hope that the government can be advised. Chairman, I seek clarification. Ms. Elizabeth Quat, I've already announced that the meeting is adjourned. You can still speak tomorrow.